fair warning, guys, this is going to be a very long discussion video. It's going to be a wrap up on Yusaku as an entire character. I have a lot to say, so I'm just warning you ahead of time before I start this video that this is going to be a long video. It's a podcast video, so just listen to it. You don't really have to watch it. There's no editing. There's none of that. It's just me talking about how I feel about Yusaku, giving a rundown of his character and what could have been better and stuff like that. So, like, it's going to be a long video, but just listen to it on your off time while you're drawing, while you're doing homework or whatever, just while you're working. It's a podcast video, so just relax and listen to it. I have a lot of thoughts on this. And yeah, so just don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It's a long video. You don't have to watch it. Just listen to it in the background, and it's fine. But yeah. Yo, what up, guys? This is your boy Legendary here, and today, people, we're going to be doing another discussion video, kind of a little bit of a rant video as well. Just giving my final thoughts on Yusaku Fujiki, as you guys see in the thumbnail. I wanted to do this at the end of Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains, and I was working on it, and I was really excited, and then things came up, and then I never got to it. I figured, all right, well, we're about to reach the new era of Yu-Gi-Oh! A lot of things are changing. We're going to get a new main character. Why not, on my channel, give my final thoughts on Yusaku as a character and, just air it all out. I'm sure a lot of you guys know that I'm not the biggest fan of Yusaku. I never have been. I've tried. I've waited patiently to see what would happen with Yusaku, but unfortunately, it didn't end up as good as I thought. But it's not all bad. But I do have my complaints about him as a character and what the writers did with him and, this and that. But it is what it is. But I just want to give you guys my final thoughts so you guys can know exactly where it is that I rank him on the list of main characters and what I think of him as a whole, especially now that it's over, because I made that video on Yusaku such a long time ago. And, now that it's been a few months after the show ended, I feel like it's only appropriate to finally, close the chapter, close the book, so to speak, on Yusaku as a character and kind of just let you guys know what I think. But yeah, so this will be interesting. This will be interesting indeed. So, let's talk about Yusaku Fujiki. Alright, so first up, let's start talking about Yusaku. I'm going to give you a quick little rundown on his character if you don't remember, or if this is your first time watching this video and you haven't watched Vrains or whatever. Essentially, Yusaku Fujiki is, when he was a little boy, 8 years old or something like that. I forgot what age, but he was essentially kidnapped, stolen away from his family, and he was a part of this lost incident, is what they called it, where I think it was six children got kidnapped, and essentially they were forced to duel in this room in solitary confinement, pretty much, where they do nothing but duel the entire time, and they're forced to duel, and they're not allowed to eat or anything until they win the duel. So they're kind of trained to become like these amazing, strong duelists in a sense. And the purpose for that is Dr. Kogami wanted to create these AIs. So, and Yusaku was one of the lost incident kids that was chosen for that experiment. And because of that, he suffers through a lot of trauma growing up, and he just went through a lot of pain. He was very lonely, obviously. He was confused. I mean, his life was taken away from him and all that stuff. And he said that in the past. And yeah, so the story of Yusaku from then on was him trying to rebuild himself, and it didn't kind of work. And then he ultimately decided that his goal was to seek revenge on the Knights of Hanoi, who were responsible for the experiments at the time that we thought. Basically, he wanted revenge against them, so he wanted to defeat them and stop their ways. And I don't really know what specifically. I don't know if he wanted to kill them or not. I'm not sure. But he just wanted his revenge, whatever that meant. But he did, by the end of season 1, get that revenge and kind of got closure on that and whatnot. But yeah, so that's kind of his character right there. That's his backstory, and that's his goal in the show. So by the end of season 1, all of that is pretty much resolved. By the end of season 1. So it's kind of interesting that they kind of resolved his entire character arc in that first season. And then after that, it was more focused on the other Ignises, the AIs that were created from it. I was one of them, as well as, Windy, Lightning, Aqua, Earth, and Flame. But yeah, those are all the Ignises. So, the Ignises were created from the data collected from the 6 different kids. But anyway, we're gonna be talking about Yusaku. So just to get back on track, yeah, that's Yusaku's character, plain and simple. Yusaku's character was kind of overall his personality. I'll just get into his personality now because you guys got his backstory. So his personality is he's extremely quiet. He's to himself. He doesn't really build a lot of relationships with other people. He's kind of to himself all the time, and he doesn't really interact. Pretty much just repeating myself, but he doesn't really interact. He's just this loner character who's very broken inside and just doesn't interact much with people and is always to himself. In season 1, he was actually kind of rude. You know, he has this kind of like little gimmick that he does where he names 3 different things about you that I guess he finds annoying or whatever, and then he like just says it. Like, he's very blunt, and he doesn't know people's feelings very well, so he doesn't know what comes across as rude or disrespectful. He just says whatever's on his mind, and he has no like he really doesn't have any feelings at all, like in terms of like really connecting with other people and just understanding how they feel or seeing, oh, maybe this isn't right to say or whatever. So in the very beginning, the very early stages of Vrains, he was very annoying to me, like very rude, and I didn't like that for a main character. It was a different take, but I didn't like that. But he eventually stopped that anyway. But yeah, that's pretty much it. He's just kind of like this bland character who doesn't communicate much and this and that. And just to kind of like sum it up, and I'm sorry if this sounds all kind of all over the place. I do have bulletin points, but you know, I'm kind of also speaking off my head. It's not all written down. It's all just me kind of venting and ranting based on my memory and, you know, what I liked and didn't like. But essentially what we have here is the formula to an arguably perfect main character. Everything about Yusaku is in theory perfect, like on paper perfect. We have a character that's very different from the other main characters. He's similar to Yusei, where he has a bit of a darker backstory than the others. But it's a different twist. You know, he was kidnapped and he was tortured, and they were finally found, and then he had to rebuild his life and all this stuff, and it was just hard. But the backstory for Yusaku is good. Like, he wants revenge, which is very different. No main character really comes back for revenge. Even Yusei, who, you know, he was basically out to, you know, save people and save Neo Domino City and Satellite and all this stuff, and, you know, kind of unite everyone. That was his goal. He wanted to unite everyone and kind of make up for the mistakes of his father and what happened and stuff, you know, when Neo Domino City split into 2 and whatnot. But he was always a noble character. But here we have a main character whose main focus is revenge. To hurt, I guess. It wasn't really implied if he wanted to hurt them or not, or wanted to kill them. It's just that he wanted revenge, whatever that meant. I guess that means finishing them off in a duel or whatever. I guess that's what that meant, but I don't know. It was never implied. I don't think it was directly said that he wanted to kill them or even specifically hurt them, so I don't know what his revenge plan was even really for. Now that I really look back at it, it's like, great, he got his revenge, he beat them in a duel, but was that really his goal, just to, like, beat them? I think it was just personally to find out who they were, why they did it, and to make them, I guess, somewhat suffer in a way, but not really, just kind of understand. I think he just wanted closure on everything, and that's why he went through all that, because he didn't really have a goal to hurt them or kill them. So I really don't know what he was going for, other than to get closure on why this happened, and just to look at those people in the face who did this to him, the Knights of Hanoi, and I guess show the pain. I don't really know what his real point was. I never really thought about it, but yeah, looking back at it, it's like, what was his? Yeah, he wanted revenge, but what does that mean? What does the revenge mean? But whatever, it's Yu-Gi-Oh! So everything settled in a duel, so he got his revenge by beating Revolver in a duel and stopping their plans and this and that and whatnot. So he got what he wanted, but yeah. So you have a formula that's great. Like, everything about it is good. The problem with Yusaku is, when it comes to his backstory, that's literally all we got. Like, we didn't... He goes on... Well, he went on once when he dueled against Akira and kind of talked about how he lost so much from the Lost Incident. Like, everything was taken from him. And the biggest question mark we have is what was taken from him. Now, yes, he was kidnapped, so obviously, that changes everything. But like, what did he lose? Did he have a family before that? Was he an orphan? Did he have friends? Like, based on the flashbacks, he seemed like a pretty happy kid. He had his cards and stuff, and he was just running about. We didn't see him running with anyone. So there was just no flashbacks or any moments or any dialogue from Yusaku himself specifically saying all the things that he lost, or even anything, making any comment towards like a family that he lost or friends that he lost or anything like that. I mean, we don't really know. He was just kind of this random kid that was running around, and then Kid Revolver found him and took him in, and then that's when it happened. But I just, we didn't get anything, and the entire time we were waiting until the end of Reigns so we could get these questions answered. I was trying not to be too harsh on Yusaku in the beginning because there's still time. We're like less than halfway through the show. There's plenty of time to get some more backstory on him. But honestly, after season 1, that was it. There was nothing more. They didn't elaborate more on Yusaku as a character in terms of like what happened in his past, or him trying to start new relationships and trying to work his way up and whatnot. After that, it was more focused on the Ignises, but Yusaku as a character after season 1 became very plain, and we were waiting for more, but there was no more. There was nothing more there. And that's what really frustrated me about his character is I just couldn't attach myself to him. I didn't know who he was before the incident, so if I had seen flashbacks of him with his family, or even if it was just as simple as him mentioning his family or showing a picture of him and his family, and then him just quickly saying like, I lost everything that I cared about, and then it showed like just an image of him and his family, that would have meant so much. But he never talks about it throughout the entire show. He never ever brings up anything about a family or friends or any type of relationships that he had with people in the past that he lost, that he can no longer rebuild. Like, we don't know. After he gets saved from the lost incident, he finds Kusanagi at some point, and they decide to work together, and he lives with them. But he never went back to his parents or his orphanage, if he even had an orphanage. Like, even that wasn't brought up. Like, it's possible he was just an orphan, but once again, he didn't say that, and no one else in the cast said that either. No one ever like mentioned where Yusaku came from. So to this day, and the show's already over, we'll never get the answers. Who was Yusaku before that? We know who he is now, but who was he before that? What type of personality did he have? What type of people did he know? What was he passionate about? Stuff like that. Like, we don't know anything about who he was. So when we see who he is now and how broken he is, how can we really relate to that? Because it's like, yeah, you're broken, but I mean, who were you before that anyway? Like, you need, as the viewer, you need to know who this person was to know how broken that they are now. But because we don't know who he was or how he was or his life before the lost incident, all the impact after the lost incident doesn't hold as much weight at all. So for me, I was like, I want to attach myself to this because on paper, this seems like a great idea, but once again, we don't have more. We don't have that backstory. We don't have that extra, what gives Yusaku that extra or whatever. I don't know how to say it, but he needs more. He didn't get it. He didn't get it, and that's a huge disappointment. I mean, if you guys watch Yu-Gi-Oh! Everything's channel, and all the guys talked about it on their podcast, their biggest disappointments, one of their biggest ones that I think was on all of their lists, if not 3 or 4 out of 5 of them, was Yusaku's backstory. It's like, that's like on the top 5 list because for a reason, because everyone was waiting for it. Everyone wanted to connect to Yusaku, but it was very difficult to connect to him because we didn't know anything about him. And even after he finally got his goal accomplished after that, it's not like he made any moves forward in his life to kind of change the way that he is by, connecting with other people. Like, maybe he smiled once or twice in the whole show, but like, he wasn't being a jerk anymore or anything like that, which is how I perceived him at first. But he's just obviously cold, he's kind of shut it in, which I understand. I don't want to sound insensitive, like, oh, he went through a really tough thing. How could you not understand that? Like, if I were in his shoes, I would be terrified too. But that's not the point. We're talking about me viewing it as, as the audience. I have to feel something. I have to feel what this character is going through. More than just knowing the fact that, yes, he went through this and yeah, that's really rough. But I need to feel what that character lost. I need that backstory, It's like you walk down, you walk, like, let's say somebody who's just really angry all the time and you don't know why, and he's kind of a jerk or disrespectful, or he's just always sad and always alone, and you kind of feel for him, but you never like get to know the person, or that person never shares anything about their background at all, and you don't know anything about them, so it's even harder to relate to them and understand why they are the way they are. So you only like get to know them based on what you see in front of you right now, but without that context, without that background, without that background to know about that person, it's hard for you to relate. It's hard for you to connect. It's like, I don't know anything about this person. He's angry all the time, or he's sad all the time, and I feel for him, and it sucks. Maybe we know, the basic rundown, like, oh yeah, he went through something really tough, but until you get to know that person in depth and see and hear what he's really been through, it's not as easy to connect to that person. So, and that's how I see it. Yusaku is just like that. He's very difficult for me to connect to, and for many other people, because yes, he has the backstory. Yes, he has a traumatic, upbringing or whatever, but like, what was he before then, and why should I feel for this? It's not like I knew that Yusaku was like this really happy, wonderful kid who had amazing dreams and this and that, and all of a sudden, bam, that was ripped away from him. Like, we don't even know anything about who he was as a kid, or his personality, or what he cared about. Nothing. No mention of his family or friends, and I'm gonna keep repeating that because that's so important. You know this main character, you want to know where he came from. Even Jaden, like, we didn't really get too much history on his background, but in season 3 we got a lot more. And his parents were always working all the time, so his parents would get babysitters to babysit him and duel him, to kind of like, play with him and stuff while they were working. So we could kind of see that, Jaden was always a happy child, but we could infer from that he was basically alone most of the time, and his parents were always working, and because of that, he had his friends, and then, Yubel kind of got involved in that and started killing off his friends, and we kind of feel for that. So, like, we have background of who he was, before that, before who he became or anything like that, and we even got background on why his memories were wiped and this and that. So, like, there's background there. Yugi, we know who he is before that. We know his personality. He lives with his grandpa. He lives with his mom too, but they didn't show that in the dub for whatever reason. And all that. Yusei, we know his backstory. His both his parents died, in the explosion, along with many other people, and the city split apart. Yuma, we know his whole family. We know his dad and mom disappeared. We know that they're in the astral world. He lives with his grandma. He lives with his sister, and this and that. Like, we know his family. We know who he is. We know his family life and all that. And the same goes for Yuma. For Yuya. He lives with his dad and his mom, and that whole story is, really complicated by the end. But regardless, we know these characters' backstories, who they are, and we feel connected to them to a certain level. But because Yusaku doesn't have a family or any background or any information at all about where he came from, I'm sorry, it's just hard to connect to. I'm going to move on from that point because I feel like that's explanatory enough. I kind of repeated myself a lot, but that is arguably the biggest, for me, is arguably the biggest fault with Yusaku as a character, because the writers, for whatever reason, did not want to give us a more in-depth character where we really delve into, like, who he is and where he came from, and delve more into that pain and whatnot. But yeah, so backstory and personality, I wasn't a fan of. His personality made sense with his backstory, but without that extra context in the background, knowing all that other stuff I just spoke about, all that stuff just doesn't mean much. Like I said, it's just good on paper. Like, here's an idea for a character. I'm going to write it down. I want you to fall in love with just the idea of this character, but we're not going to delve deep into this character. You're never going to know anything really in depth about him. You're never going to see too much growth, but the idea is still there. And I feel like the people who do love Yusaku are in love with the idea of someone being kidnapped and going through trauma, and it's hard for him to relate. And there are people like that, but that person, you guys, you have a backstory that there's a reason why you are the way that you are. Yusaku, we don't know. We know why he is the way he is, but we don't know who he was before that, so it's just difficult. But I understand where Yusaku's coming from, and I feel for him. But as a character, you know, when you're trying to invest in a character, you want to know everything about him, and he's the main character. And it's no excuse because every other Vrains character got a good backstory. Every one of them. Every one of them. Homura got a backstory. The Zaizens got a backstory. The Ignises got a backstory. Blood Shepherd, Emma, every other character has a backstory except the main character. That doesn't make any sense. Honestly, that's a crime. How can you not have the main character do that? And that's why I felt like the writers were just trying to make this really cool, you know, cool main character on paper. He's not that in-depth. You're never going to know that much about him. Like, they were just trying to create a male fantasy character, and that was it. They weren't trying to do anything creative or anything more with it. But if they had done all these things that I spoke about, plus other things that I may speak about, he could have been the best main character and an amazing main character. But because they didn't add that, he's just kind of bland. There's just nothing there. Nothing at all. Not to me anyway. Not enough. In the final duel against Ai, yes, that did bump him up a little. We saw him cry. We saw him tear up. That was a beautiful finale. I'll give it that. Beautiful finale. It was believable too. It was definitely believable. And that actually transitions into the next thing. Yusaku and his relationships. So Yusaku doesn't have, in my opinion, relationships with the other characters that are really all that interesting. So we got Go, we got Oi. Those are the main two. We obviously have Soulburn. He spent a lot of time with Homura. We got the relationship with Ai. I think that's mostly it. He knows other people, but he doesn't know them that deeply. But the relationships that he formed with other people was whack. Like, everyone else felt close to Yusaku in some sort of way because they saw him as this hero and they respect him in this and that and they feel for him. But Yusaku as a character never, to me, he never felt like he cared about anybody other than Kusanagi and other than Ai. And that's it. Those are the only two people he cared about. And we saw that at the final season. And I'm sorry, at the end of season 2 when he fought against Bowman, and he gave the friendship speech that every main character has to give about talking about bonds and friendships and, you know, united and all that crap. Like, honestly, I didn't buy it. I was like, why are you talking about this? You don't have a relationship with anybody. You don't talk to anyone. You keep to yourself. And yes, it was kind of stated that he didn't build connections with certain people because he was trying to protect them, keep them out of it. But he didn't have any relationships. We never saw him care about anyone. And when everybody's dying off in season 3, like, he barely reacted to anything other than Kusanagi's death and kind of sort of Soulburner's death. A little bit Revolver's death, maybe. And Ai's death. And that was pretty much it. So, I don't know, just, he didn't have good relationships, in my opinion, with the other characters, and that made it even more difficult for me to connect to him, because he's the main character. I understand he's rough around the edges and a little harder to reach, but you figure that the whole point of a character like that is that by the end, you would feel that he finally got closer, even if it was baby steps, finally got closer to having these close relationships with everyone else. And I didn't buy that he had a close relationship with anyone else. And it was proven in the Bowman arc when everybody was dying off. Aoi literally died right in front of him. He literally didn't react or he didn't care at all. I blame the artists for that or the writers. I don't know. I don't know why they chose to do that. He's known her for a long time. They have a sort of relationship in a sense, you know. So you would think there would be a reaction, but he didn't even care. Who died after that? I don't know. There's just so much. And in season 3, you know, when everybody was being killed off by Ai and all that stuff, like, just it was such an awkward thing for me because he didn't react when Aoi got booted off or whatever. And then, and I might be getting some information wrong. It's been a while, so if I get some information wrong, just excuse me. But yeah, he didn't really react to Aoi's death, so to speak. And then after that, I think he dueled Kusanagi, and that was an impactful duel. I love that moment. He was really broken by that. And then he woke up from his little coma, and then right away, Soul Burner dies, and he kind of sort of reacts, but it was like just like Soul Burner. And that was like he just said his name, but it wasn't even like like there was hardly any emotion into that, in my opinion. Some people might disagree, that's fine. But for me, I was like, yeah, that's you wake up from a coma from losing your best friend. You should be so extremely fragile right now. And then to wake up and instantly see another one of your supposed close friends die right in front of you, you would think that would break you even more, but no, he barely reacted to that. And I just didn't like that. I just really did not like that. And then the final duel with Ive was perfect. And there was that emotional payoff that I actually believe. The only relationship that I actually believed was the relationship between Yusaku and Kusanagi and Yusaku and Ai. So it makes sense that both their deaths were the most impactful because of that. But yeah, the relationship with Ai was built up since season 1. Like you could tell in the beginning, he didn't care about Ai at all. He was just like this annoying little AI that he was holding hostage. And then they got a little bit closer at the end of season 1 when I saved his life and this and that. And then they built that good friendship. And then after that, he wasn't rude to Ai anymore. So you see that growth where he's no longer treating him poorly like he used to, where he used to just treat him horribly, treat him like nothing, and find him super annoying. But they formed that friendship, and then over time, that friendship got stronger. It was believable. So then when we get to season 3, when I lost everything and kind of disappeared and came back in this new look, this new form, and now all of a sudden he's going off kind of killing everybody and trying to get world domination, so to speak. He was just confused and he was hurt. And that's why through the entire season 3, Yusaku didn't say anything. He was in shock. So I was always confused. But then by the end, when he finally dueled him and he finally said what he needed to say, finally got it off his chest, it was believable. It was believable, the pain that he felt after seeing his friend go down this dark path, seeing that there was no way out for him in his mind, and that no matter what, he was always destined to kind of be the destruction of mankind, and he was always going to lose his best friend and all that stuff. So it's sad and it's believable because we saw this relationship grow from the beginning. All the other relationships I didn't buy at all because there was hardly anything there. Nothing. But with Ai, it was believable. So when we saw Yusaku cry as Ai was dying, it felt so impactful. It felt so believable because you bought that relationship. You bought it and you saw it being formed from the beginning. You saw it being formed as something that was completely one-sided, and then they became genuine friends and he cared about him. To see him go down that dark path really hurt him, and to see him die in front of him hurt him even more. And I bought it and I loved it. It was perfect. So that's just kind of to show you guys that there is something beautiful there, and he did build a good relationship with Ai, but everyone else he didn't. And it's so hard for me to really love a character that didn't build any sort of relationship with anyone else. I mean, even a character like Kaito, who's a rival, and he was very cold in the beginning and very distant and this and that. Like, he was subtle, but it was shown in later seasons that he did care about these guys, about Shark, about Yuma. He cared about them, and even at the end on his deathbed, he confessed that those are his best friends as he was dying. So if a character like that, who barely shows any sort of like lovable connection towards anyone, can confess that those people that he's been with, Yuma and Shark, are his closest friends before he dies, his best friends, just like Shark. Like, I mean, come on, you're telling me that our main character can't do that? Nah, I don't buy that. But yeah, so personality lacking, backstory severely lacking, and the relationships between him and other characters is lacking completely, other than with Ai and Kusanagi, a little bit Soul Burner, somewhat sort of Revolver, kind of. It's kind of weird, their relationship, but I just didn't buy it. Yeah, I think that's more or less everything. I guess what I'll say a little bit of what maybe I don't know if I'll leave it for another video now where I discuss what I think Yusaku could have been and the direction that his character could have gone in. Like, let's say, for example, after season 1 and stuff like that. Like, or maybe I'll just quickly run it down here. I don't know if I'll make another video. So essentially, I feel like after season 1, I felt like he got over the whole trauma a little too quickly there, because like after the duel with Revolver, all of a sudden he was like smiling and stuff, and I didn't really buy that. I'm like, so that's it? You're good now? That's it? Like, you're good? And like, you went through all that pain, you're so angry, and now you're fine? I don't know. It just felt really weird. It didn't feel like I felt like some of the weight should have been lifted off, but there should have still been some weight left on, because he did go through a huge trauma. I don't feel like he would have just instantly like turned and been like, all right, I'm good now. I'm a good happy guy now, I guess. I don't know. It just felt really weird. I didn't buy that. But I think after season 1, I think Yusaku's character would have been better if after season 1 he would have focused on trying to rebuild his life. You know, went back, tried to find his family, tried to rebuild the relationships with them. Maybe tried going you know, he went to go, you know, and tried to build a friendship with him and stuff like that. And I think it would have been better for him as a character if afterwards, after what he had been through, after, you know, finally resolving everything with the Lost Incident and coming to peace with it, that now he can try to move forward. You know, try to move forward by building connections, trying to gain back everything that he lost. And, you know, showing him kind of struggling with that, trying to build it, but struggling with that because the pain is still there. It's not gone yet, you know, and he it's very difficult for him. But you see that transition from him being in pain to him finally being okay. And then by the end of Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains entirely, we see that he's transformed. He's not like Yuma where he's super excited. That just wouldn't be in character, but he's at peace and he has these nice relationships. He smiles here and there, you know. He even has some fun duels with like Go or whatever or whoever. Maybe a ceremonial duel with Revolver just for fun. I don't know, stuff like that. Like, seeing that growth from being broken to being okay was important for us to at least, even if we didn't get the backstory, which we should have, like that's crucial. We definitely should have gotten the backstory in season 2 and in season 3. I don't know why they didn't, but if we didn't get that, to at least see him grow gradually in a believable way with the other characters, I think would have meant so much to me personally. Allowed me to at least attach to him in that sense, you know, because he's struggling, trying to grow, trying to rebuild relationships. But in season 2 and 3, in reality, he didn't really grow any relationships. He didn't try. He was just kind of there. Everybody else was doing their thing. He was doing his own thing, but he was just there. He wasn't trying to do anything. He didn't really have any particular goal. He was just kind of, he was the hero of the show, therefore he had to be there to save the day, but he had no personal goal of his own to overcome his internal struggles or anything. He was just over it after season 1, like instantly, and that's not realistic. That's not how it happens in real life. You don't just instantly get over it. There's steps you got to take to move forward, and there's times you're going to trip and fall back into it and stuff. Also, I felt like Yusaku would have been a better character overall if he kind of showed off his anger more. There was just one scene, you know, with Akira. I mean, there were more scenes maybe, or maybe one or two other scenes, but there was one scene specifically when he dueled Akira in season 1, and he showed the anger and frustration that he was feeling. Everybody remembers that scene. It was an amazing scene. It was great. And then we didn't get anything much more after that, really. Even in the Revolver duel, we didn't get that much of that type of emotion we got in that duel. I felt like Yusaku would have been a better character overall as well if instead of being kind of a loner character, if he was more of an angry character. If that anger inside him showed more often and he was this relentless character that's out to seek revenge, out for blood. I think that would have been better for his character, because even though It's cool that he is the way he is because there are people who are quiet and more closed off and don't express themselves, so you can relate to those people. But I felt like it made more sense because his goal was already out to seek revenge. So I felt like it only made logical sense that he would have, cracked more often and like showed that anger and frustration and every. I think it would have been great if the trauma was shown better. Like every time Yusaku was actually close to losing, or not every time, but certain times when he was really close to losing, and he didn't really think there was a way out, he would have snapped, right? Because in the Lost Incident, he was forced to duel and he couldn't eat, and he was forced to duel endlessly until he won the duel. So if he lost, he got electrocuted and wasn't fed any food. So obviously that causes a lot of internal trauma. That means every time you're about to lose a duel, your PTSD is going to kick in and you're going to feel like you're going to get electrocuted and you start freaking out and being tortured. I felt like that should have happened more often in the show, and seeing him overcome that trauma and fear of losing a duel. And I think it would have been so great if Yusaku did lose a duel in the show, because it would have shown how he would have dealt with losing after that, because we know losing for him is a much bigger deal because he was electrocuted, he was shocked, he wasn't able to eat, and he just endlessly had to duel. And that's suffering, that's torture, that's literal torture. Like anytime you duel and you're about to lose, he should have the reaction where he almost like his heart start beating and he starts freaking out. You see the craziness in his face and he's like so desperate to win at that point, and he's kind of losing his mind a little. I think that would have been so much more powerful if we saw more scenes like that. It didn't have to be everywhere, but it had to be somewhere in the show, in at least 2 or 3 spots where we see him going through that, seeing the psychological damage that losing a duel has on him because of what he's been through. That's what should have happened. That's what should have happened. We should have gotten that. He should have been an angry character that was a little bit more unhinged. I think it would have been more interesting. More like Shun. Kuroseki Shun from Yu-Gi-Oh! R5. He was a character that was out to seek revenge, and you could tell like he was pissed off and he was out for blood. If he was somewhat similar to Shun in that aspect, I think it would have been more interesting to watch him, because this personality thing that Yusaku has where he's too quiet and doesn't talk to anybody, it's interesting, but it's also kind of boring and hard to keep up with. That's why I said Yusaku was a boring character, because he barely said anything, really. It was very frustrating. It's hard to connect when someone isn't talking. It's very difficult to form a relationship with someone when they're not sharing anything, And at least if he was angry, that's a feeling that he's sharing. That's an emotion that's coming out of him that's natural and pure. That's why that duel with Akira was so memorable to everyone, because he finally showed real emotion and we could connect with that. And his words were so powerful, and the expression on his face, the tone of his voice was perfection. But we didn't get that throughout the show. It was just that one moment, and then maybe 1 or 2 other moments later, maybe. But yeah, so he should have been an angrier character, a little bit more unhinged, in my opinion. And we should have seen the trauma. We should have seen more moments of trauma whenever he's about to lose a duel, seeing him suffer from almost losing, and also seeing him overcome that trauma, and over time throughout the show build relationships with other characters and try to rebuild his life, reconnect with his family or his friends or his orphanage or wherever he came from, and just kind of rebuild his life and become a more grounded character in reality, like grow as a human being. But like I said, after season 1, he didn't grow, he just became stale. Like there was nothing for him to really do. He was just the hero because he's the main character, and that was it. There was no real technical goal. Like eventually, like yeah, he had to stop the lightning and all that stuff and Bowman, but like that wasn't really his personal goal. It's just kind of like he just kind of came across that, and because he's the main character, he has to kind of do that. That's what it felt like. It felt more forced. It felt like he was around just to be around, and that was it. But yeah. Also, another cool thing I would have really liked is if in season 2, after he's already resolved everything from season 1, he would reconnect with his parents, and essentially, he would have an interaction connecting with his family again, trying to reform that relationship with them. And then on top of that, his parents maybe like ask him, okay, well, what's next for you? Like, what do you want to do next with your life? What's your next goal? And he's like, he basically says, I think what I want to do is I want to go and look for the other lost incident kids that were also part of this incident, and try to find them and see how they're doing, and try to help them seek peace in their mind and in their hearts or whatever, and help them get over what had happened and stuff like that. So I think that would have been a cool goal for him as a main character. Is like, all right, I've been through this incident. I know that there are five other kids. Obviously, he already knew Spectre, and Spectre's always going to follow Revolver, but there's 4 other ones. It's like, all right, well, why don't I go out, look for the other kids that were kidnapped, and help them through this, see how they're doing, and save them like I was saved as well, and whatever. So I think that would have been a much cooler role for Yusaku to play, and it would have given him something to do in season 2. And I felt like they just kind of jumped right into the Ignis arc right away, and I felt like they didn't do a good enough job giving Yusaku a personal goal to go for. Season 1 was about revenge. Season 2 should have been about him recollecting his reforming his relationships with family members, with other friends and stuff like that, and trying to find the other kids who were also gone, and try to help them get through this tough time and see how they've been doing. I feel like that just, I would have connected with him more as a main character if he did something like that, as opposed to just doing nothing or being nothing or having no goal, and kind of just being okay with everything that's happened and just letting it go, but then not really trying to fix anything or trying to move forward in any way. I just feel like it doesn't make a lot of sense. I felt like there was just so much more room to do a lot of interesting things with Yusaku as a character. He has everything he needs to be a very deep character, but they didn't go deep with him at all. They just gave you just the basic idea and that's it. But they could have done more, and I feel like the Lost Incident kids would have been perfect. And Homura already went out looking for him, so they could even connect it where like Homura goes up to Yusaku, tries to meet him and this and that, and then Homura and Yusaku go off together to find the other 3 Lost Incident kids, and then we find out that Windy's kid was already killed off, and that's how we get introduced to Windy. Jin is connected with Lightning, and Earth is connected with Spectre, so we already knew that. So like it could have created, like I felt like the story could kind of write itself. Like, you know, you meet Homura and you meet Flame at the same time, then you go off on a journey with them to find the others, and then you find Windy along the way, and then along the way you find out that Windy's kid was already killed, so he can't find him, and then somewhere along the way we find out that Earth is connected to Spectre, and then Aqua is connected to Aoi's friend. I forgot her name, but whatever. The point is, like, there was room for that. There's so much extra content in there that they could have explored that they just didn't. And it could have really made Yusaku's character more interesting and created some even more interesting scenes in season 2, because there were interesting things in season 2, but I felt like they rushed into the main plot way too fast. Like with Bowman and the other Ignises, I felt like they could have spent maybe like 10-15 episodes or something like that just exploring Yusaku, dealing with what he does afterwards, looking for the other kids. Maybe I wants to go and look for the other Ignises, and along the way, you know, Homura and Yusaku are looking for them, and then they find the other Ignises, and then you get all this. I feel like it all leads into itself perfectly, and I felt like it didn't even need to be forced. Like it would have been natural for it to go in that direction. But yeah, so that's another thing I felt like could have been handled so much better with Yusaku's character after season 1. So that's pretty much it. If you guys want to know where Yusaku ranks personally on my list of main characters, if you haven't been able to tell, he would be number 6. So I'm not going to remake a video talking about my top 6 main characters. It's just Yusaku that I have to add in. So I'll just tell you right now, he's number 6 on the list. He's below. It was so hard for me to attach myself to him. It was very frustrating. I really wanted to love him. I really wanted to like him just like every other main character. I want to like every character. I'm very open-minded. This was the first time I've ever felt so strongly about a character, like in a negative way. Like, wow, we really didn't get that much for him. He was just kind of this blank cool, like, look at me with my cool deck. Oh yeah, I'm kind of, I don't have much of a personality and this and that, the edgy guy and whatnot. And the sad edgy guy with the traumatic backstory, but there was no real substance to it. So it was just like, all right, I don't need you to look cool. I want you to show me that you're cool. I don't need you to look sad. I want you to really, really show me that you're sad. I want to hear it all. I want to know who you are. I want to feel for you. I want to walk in your shoes and be able to cry with you and be able to scream with you when you're going through these moments, be able to feel what you're feeling. But how can I feel what you're feeling if you're never feeling anything? It's very difficult to feel something when the main character himself isn't feeling anything. The majority, like 95% of the time, he's not feeling anything. He's just there. And it's so hard. It's so hard for me. Yes, there were great moments. The eye death was great. The Kusanagi scene was great. The revolver duel was great. The duel with Akira was great. Those moments that he showed emotion were memorable because of the emotion he showed. And then everything else just kind of just fades away because you don't remember, because he didn't really show anything. You didn't feel anything. He was just bland most of the time. He really was. I know you might not want to admit that, but let's be real. He was kind of bland. It was just plain. There was nothing there. There was no more substance to him as a character, as a person, nothing. It was just, he was plain. That final scene with I bumps him up. So overall, I like him as a character. Like that final duel and that final scene bumped him up to at least like him. Before, I was just kind of neutral. Before that, I didn't like him. Before that, I really didn't like him. So over time, he gradually grew. So now I at least like him, but I don't really like him. I don't really have any close attachment to him. I just like him enough to like him, and that's it. But that's pretty much it. He's number 6 on my list. That's just my personal feelings. If he's number 1 on yours, that's great. I'm glad you were able to connect with him. I'm glad you were able to see more in him. Maybe you saw something in him that you saw in yourself. And for that, I think that's beautiful. I feel like there's always something you can get from the main characters and it can relate to someone. And Yusaku obviously relates to some people. That's why some people love him. I don't know if it's a 50-50 split. I don't know what the ratios are, what the percentages are. Maybe Dylan would know more. But other than that, for me, he was okay, but he could have been so much better. He could have been great. He could have been amazing. Like, he had such good ideas. The writers had good ideas with this guy, but they didn't execute it properly and they didn't expand on it. They just left him as the generic, cool, emotionless main character that didn't really do anything. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So that's Yusaku. That's how I feel about him. Those are my final thoughts on him. He's okay. He could have been so much better, so much lost potential. But he's okay. He's not bad. And I'm glad for those who do really love him as a character and connect with him. That's always great. So don't think I'm attacking you guys. I'm sharing my feelings, how I felt watching the show. How the emotions that I felt or / didn't feel that I wanted to feel while watching the show. So it sucks because I did feel something. I felt frustration because I wanted to feel something, but I couldn't feel anything because there was nothing to really feel. Nothing. It was just nothing. But yeah. Anyway, guys, thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening. I really appreciate it. Let me know in the comment section below. What did you think of Yusaku Fujiki / Playmaker? Did you like him? Did you not like him? What did you like about him? What didn't you like about him? Did you think he could be better? Did you think he was just right? Let me know. Let me know how you feel. Try to be reasonable, guys. Don't be disrespectful in the comment section below, attacking each other. Don't attack me. I know there will be people that attack anyway, but just be civil. We could have a open, respectful conversation with each other about how we feel about this character without, attacking each other and ripping each other's heads off. Like, relax. You have your favorites. I have mine. Someone has their favorites. Some people really hate Yuma. I really love Yuma. Like, everyone has different feelings and opinions on certain characters. You shouldn't attack someone else because they don't agree with your opinion or they don't see what you saw. Even if it gets frustrating for you, but it's fine. Just be respectful. But thank you guys for listening. I really appreciate it. I love you guys. Thank you guys so much for everything. I'm glad I finally made this video. Let me know what you guys think. God bless you guys. See you guys in the next video. Gotcha!